for Ruhama's house. Thank you so much. So first of all, let's make a dedication. B'ezrat Hashem. May all that I say and all the chizik that we gain bring nachat ruach to Hashem Yitbarach, serve as a zchut for Klal Yisrael, and invoke Rachamei Shamayim for all those in need of Yeshuot and Nechamot. Amen. It should serve as a zchut Leilui Nishmat Rebbetzin Henny Machles Alea Shalom. And her zchut, we have the zchut to have this beautiful Torah Institute and learn Torah. B'ezrat Hashem to serve as a zchut, a shining beacon for all of us. And also Leilui Nishmat Zusha Shalom Ben Meir Alav Shalom. Tonight is his Yertzeit Muhammad's amazing father. Whoever of us know Muhammad know that for sure the light that shines from his father must have been a beautiful message and a source of amazing energy for her, to give her a lot of strength and goodness to open herself up all the time. So everything that we say should serve as an Ilui Nishmat. B'ezrat Hashem to him. Amen. And it was interesting because when I was putting together the class in Parashat Yitro, wow, what a parsha, I thought to myself, okay, I have a little bit of information. I wanted to know this wonderful neshama that we're dedicating the class to. And I said, you know what, let's tell me a little bit about him. And it's very interesting how the choice words that were given to me was basically that he did everything against basically what would we call the grain of logic, right? Apparently he had not so much funds, and yet whoever came, he would tend to open up his warm hand and heart and give money to. And that goes against the grain of logic. I mean, how does it make sense? Think about it. God asks us to open our hearts, open our pockets, to give money, and it doesn't make sense. You think to yourself, well, this person comes to the door and wants money, and you think to yourself, why should I give my hard-earned money? Damn, I'm going out and get a job, right? And you're basically taking your money. Now, you're not investing it in anything either, because it's not like you're getting dividends back, so to speak, that you could see in this world, right? You really, asked to part with something that you feel is yours, and you're supposed to go beyond that logic, and you're supposed to take it and now invest it in someone, and that person is going when you don't even know really in certainty where that money is going. And to make matters even worse, we have to pray that the person that we're giving money to, you have to pray that he should be a rightful source and a righteous source, because it's written in the Torah that if you're giving money, even if you're gullible and you're naive and you want to do the right thing and you're giving money and it's not going necessarily to a Torah source, you're not really getting the full extent even of the mitzvah, so to speak, because you should check out who you're giving money to. So it's not enough to just say, I gave money, you have to sort of check in. You need a merit also to be able to give to someone. And you have to actually daven and pray to Hashem that he gives you the merit to be able to give money, and it should go to the rightful source. So the fact that he opened up his heart and was such a giver, what does it show? He really wanted to be the giver. He really wanted to give. And he knew in his deep depths of his soul, this is not mine. It's not mine to give. I'm the, holder of this money. And the word, in fact, is the word tzedakah. Where does it come from? Tzedek, justice. It's written, the Chachamim, our sages teach us that when a person has money, what they don't remember, way back when they were up and, before their soul came down, was that they were given this money to hold on to. And they were also told, listen, guys, this money's not yours. I'm putting it in a safe deposit called such and such family. And when someone comes and claims and wants money, tzedakah, and claims, that you should open up your pocket, and well, guess what? That money really belongs to that person, and you have to create justice in the world and give it to them. It's not yours. They're doing you a favor by enabling you to give the money that belongs to them. And you're just, so to speak, channeling. That's the new word today. You're channeling the energy of tzedakah. And that's essentially what you're doing. So, Bezrat Hashem, we should all be enabled to open up ourselves and live with such Emuna to really understand what our role is in life. But it's not about logic. It doesn't have to make sense. That's really what this parsha is all about. You had a question? I'm sorry. I want to be able to address.
There's a man that comes every Friday, and he doesn't look well, and he calls my husband, the guy that kept asking questions. During the
that's
week,
your husband?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
During the week.
Such a nice man, yes.
Constantly, and I said to him, Mayor, you speak so well. Why don't you get a job? Like.
Oh, that's what you said to him when he was collecting money?
Yeah.
You said you speak so well when I wanted you.
I mean, he's
get
collecting. He's,
Yes, it's a valid question.
I said.
No, you said it not in a demeaning way. I'm hearing you. What you said it in a nice.
I said, why don't you get a job?
Right.
I think it went over his head, but I don't know where the money's going to. But
right.
We haven't looked up who this man is, but
right. But
we also give it to Reb Chaim's, whatever.
You're obviously giving. Yeah, you're obviously, again, you've been called to be the channeling. And we have to understand also when we give money, we're essentially also opening up our hearts. So there is something about not doing that calculation. Should I, shouldn't I? The idea is you're given the opportunity to open up your life, your heart, and emulate God in the sense of God is unconditionally giving, and he doesn't really ask questions. And so we're given the opportunity to do the same. And so it's one of the nicest ways.
I love giving. That's, but Larry's like calling me every day, this, that, and the other thing.
Right. All right. So, but God willing, it should be the simcha that you should be able to give. Yes. It shouldn't be a nudge, right?
Exactly. It's not really a nudge.
All right. Okay. So Parshat Yitro, I mean, how can we not get emotional about thinking that you talk about energy? When the fact that every Shabbos we read a certain parsha, a certain portion of the Torah, and we get to relive the experience of the story, so to speak, that's in the Torah. As we're going to shul and reading the parsha and learning about it, the Chachamim, the sages, teach us that essentially we have the merit of being able to absorb the energy of that story, and we really are reliving the energy of that time. So when we're going to this Shabbos, going to be hearing the Ramat Har Sinai of the encounter, the monumental encounter of receiving the Torah, essentially we have the amazing opportunity to see ourselves, not just to see ourselves, to remind ourselves that we were there. And it's an amazing opportunity to grow once again in that beautiful space called Ramat Har Sinai, where we were given the two crowns, Na'aseh and Nishma. We were given the opportunity to humbly accept the role of being a beacon of light onto nations and to live a life of Emuna. Now, why what enabled Yitro, who was the sorcerer, okay, of the generation? We're talking about, I don't know, I don't want to speak Lashon Hara. I don't know who is the sorcerer, the magician of today's world. I have no clue. But Houdini, maybe I don't know Houdini if he was Avodah Zarah. I mean, who am I to say? But basically, he knew every type of idolatry possible. Tarot cards, astrology, horoscope reading, palm reading, voodoo, crystal ball, here be, all of that. He was a professor in Avodah Zarah. And he essentially left everything, all of it, and attached himself. Especially he had the merit to have his daughter marry Moshe Rabbeinu, which that in itself is an amazing zchut. But the fact that he left all of it and ran after Moshe, but not just ran after him, he became his advisor. He became his assistant. And the Torah tells us he was the first one who converted in Torah. He was the first convert. Okay, he's the first Garrett said it. And he left, like I said, everything under the sun. And I want us to just all understand, and I want to stop for a minute, particularly me, when I deal with energy therapy, or Emuna energy therapy, I'm always asked, isn't that avodah zarah? Isn't that like voodoo? Like, what are you doing over there when you're doing energy medicine? Like, you know, your brother just asked me, like, how do you do that? Like, what is that? Your husband's like, what is that energy, man? I'm like, well, I simply take my energy fields and I join it with someone else's energy fields, and I kind of feel what they're feeling, and I go through the trapped emotion, and he's looking, he's like, I wonder where this one flew out of. Yeah. You know, it sounds very, you know, voodoo, and it does. But then when I explain to him that, first of all, there are people who do energy work, and there are people who do energy work. If you're tapping into the kavana, and in Judaism, everything is kavana. Everything is about where is your mind when you're doing it. Even talk about tzedakah. If I am giving tzedakah to someone at the door, and in my mind I'm thinking to myself, can you just take the 5 shekels and just leave me alone? I don't want you here. I don't know why you're bothering me. Do you see what time it is? Or why don't you go and get a job, right? If that's what I'm thinking when I'm giving the money, then I'm going, no. But you really came from a very pure place, I can tell you. I felt that. Good. No. Absolutely. You came in from a place actually of trying to lift his spirits up. No, I'm talking about someone who's like, just take the money and just, why are you hanging around here? I gave you the money, now shoo, go away, right? You know, if that's the kavanah that we have, that's a blemish on that mitzvah. And they say that every mitzvah that we create, every mitzvah that we do, we create an angel. And some angels might become handicapped because we didn't create the angel 100% well, so they might be missing a part of the wing, or their toes might be cut off, or I don't know, whatever. I don't know how angels look. But basically, they become and then we, after 120, all these angels come and greet us. And it's like, that one looks a little bit deformed, and that one's a little defective. And then we realize it's because when we did something, it wasn't with the proper kavanah. So energy work, it's all about kavanah. If my mind, as I'm doing energy therapy, is on the mindset of everything's Hashem, and I'm just, so to speak, channeling, I'm a pipeline of bringing down goodness, and the whole session is accompanied by a lot of tefillah and desire, ratzon, of goodness, of wanting to help another Jew, then it's not in the realms of the avodah zarah. And I have my Rav who also has, you know, given me this scum of it. But anyway, the bottom line is it's all about kavanah. So you can have two people doing the same thing, and one is thinking one thing, and one's thinking the other, and they're in totally two different realms. And one could be really doing avodah zarah, and the other one is not. And so the idea is it's all about the kavanah. So Yitro was he was a truth seeker. Okay, we all want to know the purpose of life. He had a passion to learn, why am I here? And so therefore, he explored all kinds of different systems and methods and wanted to see what is life all about. But when he heard, and what convinced him, and this is why, by the way, the Torah decided to name a parsha, the parsha, on his name. What gave him the merit? The fact that when he attached himself to truth, when he found truth, he did two things. And these are two things that the Torah praises. Not only praises, but we see how much Torah praises by giving him a parsha, the parsha of the Torah. Two particular midas that the Torah praises. One is admitting that you've made a mistake. And the second, which is the hardest of the admission, is to change. It's about saying, I was wrong. Okay, now what am I going to do about it? And Yitro did both. He admitted, now again, you have to understand, he had followers, he had cults, he had organizations that had his stamp on it, saying, you know, Yitro, he looked into this method and he said it was fine. This is really a source of Yeshua for you. You know, he was like that stamp of approval. And he said, I'm leaving everything. You guys have to now manage without me. I'm basically, cutting out. I'm retiring from this business. And he ran into the desert and he basically decided to go after his heart and go after the truth. And so we learn from this the importance of what Torah values as the important avoda of each and every single one of us. That don't be afraid to say, I was wrong. I know it's very hard for us to say, I was wrong, I made a mistake, and to still look at ourselves and love ourselves in that space. Don't be afraid to say, I did wrong. And not just to your family, not just to, to your friends, but to yourself. Don't be afraid to say to yourself and admit to yourself, I really should not have done that. But from that space, to grow from that space, to also be willing to make a change and say, okay, what am I going to do about it? And it's not enough to just say, I made a mistake. But what am I willing to do? How far am I willing to go to actively make a change and do something about it? And try to reverse somewhat of the damage, or at least make better from this place of wrongdoing. And essentially Yitro, did both. Now, the Torah asks, well, what really convinced him? I mean, he also heard about all the 10 plagues. I mean, I don't know, for me, that would have been kind of enough. 10 plagues, the animals coming out, the frogs, people dying in the street. I mean, I don't know, the Nile turning red. I mean, that would have been a lot to convince me that there's a God. But he obviously wasn't convinced quite yet. And there were two aspects of all these miracles that essentially really made him say, I can't deny this anymore. And the two aspects of this whole journey of the Jewish people in Mitzrayim that convinced him was the Milchama, the war with Amalek, and Kriyat Yam Suf. I should say Kriyat Yam Suf and the war with Amalek. So let's take a look and see what's so special about those two things. So Kriyat Yam Suf, the idea of the opening of the parting of the sea, the Chachamim, the sages, teach us was essentially the opening of godly consciousness. Okay? We look at the sea, and unless you're sitting on somewhere on the Cancun Islands, or I don't know, even Eilat, where you can see usually turquoise, and one of the beautiful things when I do color therapy is I love putting in turquoise into people's energy line, because you get to see the color turquoise brings to the surface that which was hidden underneath. But here they were looking at this water and had no clue what was hiding underneath. But all they knew was absolute danger, and they didn't know where it was going to take them, how. I mean, they just went in. And so the idea of this opening up was literally an opening of consciousness. In fact, the mystical teachings teach us that the waters were likened to the amniotic fluid in the mother's womb. And the Jewish people, as they were walking through the sea, they were literally, this was the birth canal, and they were being born into a new godly consciousness. They were actually the world was opening up to a whole new place. They were literally being born again, and in fact, if you look at the derech, the pathway into the desert, you'll find what happened there. They were given food. They didn't have to change their clothes. They didn't even have to clean themselves, excuse my language, to go to the restroom, right? Everything was being done for them. When do we ever do that to a baby? They were essentially a baby. They were a baby in the desert. And God took care of everything. And you know what? They didn't want to grow up because they didn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael. Hence the sin of the spies. They didn't want to grow up. They were like, I like this life. I got my chain, my clothes changed. Once it's Tommy, once it's Fox. I mean, I got all the brand name. I've got someone cleaning, putting my food out there, and whatever I want to eat, I eat with the man. Whatever I want, it's all being done for me. I mean, that's what baby's life is all about. Everything is being taken care of, the baby. And essentially that's what this was all about. So the opening was a revelation. It was a stripping off of where they were, what they were thinking before. And now they entered into a whole new level of understanding, of relating to reality. Essentially, the sages teach us, up until Yam Suf, there was no miracle like Yam Suf. And there never will be another miracle as great as Yam Suf, the Kriyat Yam Suf, the opening of the waters, until the coming of Mashiach. That's the best and biggest you're ever going to get, guys. And it won't happen again. Next time you see something like that, no, Mashiach is here. Because it's essentially not going to happen again. That was the level of revelation. It was a stripping. There was like, at that point, what we call the class No Doubts with Emuna, you could not deny there was a God. And I know since then you've got scientists saying, well, it could have happened this and my husband once showed me a documentary. It was such a bunch of I could not believe how they made it so scientific that this can happen. And the wind was blowing northeast, and the sand was blowing that way, and it caused the animals to do that. I don't know what kind of bubble mice they were coming up with. They actually had the brazenness to even try to explain it. You can't explain it. It cannot be explained. There was absolutely no doubt. In fact, how does the Torah testify? It says that those who were crossing the sea and merited to see this miracle, they attained the level of prophecy greater than the prophets themselves in later generations. That's how close and how clear they were in terms of the perception of God. There was no doubt that there's godly existence. Absolutely was shunned away. Yeah.
I mean, how many people saw him?
It's not, first of all, it wasn't a matter of seeing, it was a matter of feeling.
Okay.
It was a sensory experience. It was also a mental experience. It was a sensory experience. I can't explain to you if there is, of course, commentaries that say that they saw the sounds, but nobody really had seen God. But they seeing, when it says they saw the sounds, what it means is there was absolute clarity and truth in the experience of knowingness, of knowing that there's a God. There's no way to even begin to paint it any other picture. This is it. This is God in his, as much of a revelation as you can. How long of the? Well, first of all, you have to remember it was a buildup. Every plague shaved off another layer of doubt. Another layer. Every time it became more and more apparent. In fact, it's the first three plagues we know that the sorcerers in Egypt were able to do the three. They repeated all the first three plagues. So the first three plagues were actually. That's because I'm telling you, there is sorcery. There is koach. By the way, I wanted to say that before. I just remember now. Is don't think that there is no such thing as black magic. Don't think there's no such thing as voodoo dolls, poking a doll and something happens to someone else. They're 100%. Tarot cards, astrology, horoscope reading. I'm telling you, fortune tellers, it's all real. It's 100%, but it's koach hatuma.
The mediums also?
No, the medium comes from koach hatuma, the impure source. In order for there to be free will, there's got to be a space for the impurity to happen. Otherwise, there would be no. That's why there was Bilam and there's Moshe Rabbeinu. Like there has to always be it has to be equal, balanced as much as possible. And so it's 100%. But the problem is if you pull from that source, if you allow yourselves to be told from that place of impurity, let's say, what's going to happen or get the mazel from that place. The difference is when Hashem gives, he doesn't want anything else in return. Got it? He's an all-time giver. Unconditional giving. You get it from the other side, they want payback. And so whatever it is that they give you, and they will give you, you'll get the mazel, you'll get the zivug, you'll get the money, you'll get everything. You really will, because you're tapping into that energy line, and you can get it. But you will have to pay back big time.
Like Scientology.
Yeah, but it's 100%. They will demand what they gave you and then some. And if you don't give them back, they'll take it back.
Time in what way?
With your soul. Either person will go cuckoo, they'll go nuts because they'll be possessed from they'll become a channel of evilness because they've bought that. You've sold yourself to the devil, so to speak.
No,
Yeah.
Well, why wouldn't they want to give if they will receive it?
No, they're not. They're not. They basically kidnapped you by you taking from them.
Right.
They don't know what it is to give.
Oh.
They don't know what it means to give without taking.
Oh.
For them, they give in order to take. God gives and he doesn't want anything back.
Right.
Okay? So I just want to make that clear that again, there is such a thing and we're just not allowed to touch it.
So can we turn wood into gold?
What?
Can we turn wood into gold?
And anything. Do you know that it's written that the Tanaim and the Amorim, every single one of the commentators in the Gemara, they were all Mechayeh Meitim. They all knew how to create golem. We all talk about the Maharal mi Prague, right? The Maharal from Prague. But all of them knew the names. They all knew how to, do things in the, but they knew that they weren't allowed to do it without permission, and they didn't have the permission to do it. And so they did everything but Kedusha. But again, there is such a thing as a tzaddik guzel Hashem mekayem. The tzaddik says this is the way it needs to be. So it's something else. If you go to a tzaddik and the tzaddik says you will be healthy and da 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 da, then you don't have to be worried about. They have the right, so to speak. They've earned the right to be able to give a person a bracha and change the mazel around. There's no problem with that because that's all coming from Ratzon Hashem. But to go to the impure sources where life is all about, us getting, but there also is an obligation. In other words, the system of the Jewish world is I get, but it also puts me in a position where I'm also obligated to do something for it. Hashem gives me parnasa. I'm supposed to take that parnasa and do something good with it. Hashem gives me help. I'm supposed to take something and do. But the way that they give, the impure sources, they just give you, and as if they say you don't have to do anything back. But that's not true. You're supposed to take it and build with it. Everything. That's why they say if you want to ask something from Hashem, tell Hashem what you're going to be doing with it. I need parnasa. Why? So I could be mefarnas you. I need help so that I can use my health and go out and serve you with zeal and excitement. But really mean it. Because you can't lie to God. He knows what you're thinking. I want a great husband so I don't have to be worried about what am I going to do to calm him down so I can have more brain space to do more mitzvahs. I don't know. Right? I mean, the way to pray is everything is for you, Hashem. Everything's for you. For me, I'm just a vessel. It all has to be brought back and piped through back to godliness. The way the world works is everything is circular. We get it, we do something with it, we bring it back up. We get it, we do something, we bring it back up. And that's the cycle of life. Nothing should stay by us. We're not a storage house. We're not supposed to take and hoard, put it in the closet, and not share it and not do something with it. Everything that we get has to be used to elevate and change and transform something in this world. Otherwise, it's taken away. It's taken away and it's given to someone else who could do better with it, right? Because God doesn't just waste his energy with someone. If he's giving it to you, which is why we say every morning, Mode'ani. We're saying to Hashem, you're giving me what do you think? God has nothing better to do but to pump his breath, so to speak, in me? Well, obviously, he's giving me breath and he's giving me another day of life. Obviously, he trusts that I'm going to be doing something really, really good with that breath of my life today. And something that no one else could be doing better, because otherwise he would have invested it with them and I wouldn't have, God forbid, the person wouldn't have been breathing that day. So everything that God does, he's extremely smart, right? Infinite smartness. And he's not wasting any of his energy and his time and his money and his resources on any of us for the fun of it, because he feels bad for us. He's doing it so that we could do something with it and lift it back up. Okay? So we went off topic. And so the second thing, besides the Kriyat Yam Suf, what brought him was Amalek. Who is this Amalek? So I don't know if anyone knows, but Amalek was essentially a person. It grew into a nation, but he started out as a person. And forgive me for not knowing the exact names, but essentially Amalek was born from someone, and I don't remember her name, who wanted to get married and marry into the line of Yaakov Avinu. Wanted to marry and be part of the bloodline of Avraham Avinu. And because she was two things, one, born out of wedlock, and two, born from a mother, she was essentially a mamzer, a bastard, okay? So she couldn't be part of the line of Yaakov Avinu, so she ended up, Amalek was basically born from a bastard mother, outside of wedlock, no chance that this one's getting into Yaakov Avinu's family, history here. So she vowed to take revenge through her son, and talk about brainwash, talk about the Arabs. It pumped in her blood of the milk that she fed her child, Amalek, was one day you will make revenge on your mother's kavod. And she basically created a monster called Amalek. And so they waited, Amalek, created this cult, the nation called Amalek, and they waited for that moment where the hands, so to speak, of the strength of Am Yisrael would be down, and where was Amalek? Amalek was totally on the other side of the desert. What do they have to do to go into the desert and speak to the Jewish people? It's not like they were crossing their land or doing something to bother them. They were just, they came because they knew that at that moment there was a time of weakness. Now's the time to take revenge for my mother, so to speak. And that's essentially what happened. So Amalek knew they were going into a suicide mission. I mean, they knew very, very well God was not leaving the Jewish people even at their moment of weakness. But they still decided, we're going to do, just like the Arabs, unfortunately, today that they do to us. They're basically here to prove a point. The Jewish people are not untouchable. You can succeed, so to speak, at, causing them harm and tragedy in their people. And that's what they were. They were there to shake the certainty and to prove to the world, if we could do it, you could touch them too. And that's why they say, and they give it this, the symbolism of Amalek is, it's like a hot steaming bath, and they came in, jumped into the hot steaming bath, knowing they're going to die. So, in return, but when you put some ice cold cubes into a boiling pot of water, what do? The temperature basically in the hot boiling tub becomes colder. And that's what they did. So what came from them was what's called krirut, kal. And the word kal, which is cold, is also the root word of mikre, coincidence. And so what they basically did is they created, so to speak, this cloud of, well, maybe there's not a God in the world. Well, maybe it was a coincidence. Anytime that we have this maybe-ness floating around in our heads, that's the Amalek in us. And every single one of us has a Paro, has a Yaakov, has a Moshe, has a Yitzchak, has a Yosef, and has an Amalek. We all have them. They're all living inside of us. And so essentially this Amalek arises in us when we're passionate about doing something right. When you have this passion, that's it. I'm opening up an organization and I'm going to save the world. And it's like, what are you, nuts? Where are you going to get the money from? Who's going to care about you? Who's going to do anything for you? Who's going to even listen to you? Do you know how many organizations are out there and everyone's going bankrupt? Look at this. That's Amalek. Amalek is saying, what are you, nuts? And puts that shade of doubt on you and says, you can't do it. It's the moment of weakness where you self-doubt yourself. And then that's what it is. And that's why the Torah says, for Hashem, so to speak, says, that until the name of Amalek is not totally wiped out and annihilated, then the glory of the holy throne will not be in its fullest, fullest extent. So the idea is, our job is to rule out all these uncertainties and create a space called Emuna, which is clarity and certainty. Okay? And so Yitro, at that point, when he saw how the Jewish people won this war, Amalek, with all that went on, they won the war, and he heard of the amazing miracles that happened between Kriyat Yam Suf and Amalek. He says, that's it, I can't deny anymore. I could have denied it till now. There's nothing for me to deny anymore. And so with that knowingness, he zoomed in and became Moshe Rabbeinu's advisor. What is a miracle? What is the whole idea of a miracle? So we have what's called Teva, which is the name of the Gematria, the same numerical value as Elohim. And that's why the word Elohim is plural, right? The Yud Men is to leave a space for many, many reasons for things to happen in life. Call it Mother Nature, call it a coincidence, call it the stars, call it, global warming, whatever you want. There's many, many ways that we can come up with ideas of why things happen in this world, right? Say, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have thought that way. I invested my money. I shouldn't have listened to that person. These are all various natural causes of why I'm going through what I'm going through, or why this is happening, or, in my life. What is a miracle? A miracle essentially is a change in the natural law, where God's essence is now revealed. And essentially, you're really now facing something that goes against common logic. Mm-hmm. And you have to confront the reality of, how can I logically explain this? I can't logically explain this. This is just has to be something else but nature. And that something else but nature is God. It's and again, you have many names for it. Call it higher intelligence. I know, it's just the main thing is not to call it God. Because if I call it God, that means I'm obligated. It means I have to leave my, my pretty wardrobe. I have to leave my, I don't know, whatever. I have to leave things. And I want to leave things. So, don't make me leave things. And I won't say it's God, but I'll say it's something else greater than me, And what?
Luck.
Yeah, luck. Thank you. Exactly. I'll call it whatever it is. But the idea is to wipe that away. And the reason why Yitro comes is to say that if some, and they say, this is
speaking of
so,
giving chesed to love.
For Hashem. The idea is that we should always remember that I was going to say something and I lost my train of thought. Okay.
You were saying how Kevin and the city.
You're right. No, then I had another train of thought and that totally lost me, which means, okay, I'm on to the next thought. Something very, very beautiful that the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh teaches is that every day there is what's called a bat kol, of a heavenly voice that yells out from what they call Har Chorev. Har Chorev is Har Sinai, but they call it Chorev because it no longer, today you can go to Har Sinai. Why don't we go to Har Sinai? Why don't we rush to go to Har Sinai? Because the Kedusha left there and there's nothing there anymore, right? But so it's called Har Chorev. And every day the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says there's a bat kol, there's a voice, a heavenly voice that comes out of Har Sinai and Har Chorev and basically awakens the soul to remember that we were there and what our obligation and what our purpose in life is. Something that's beautiful that I just recently learned is that, what is a bat kol? Why do they call it a bat kol? Because it's the daughter of a voice. It's not the real voice that we heard on Har Sinai. It's an echo. It's a child born out of that experience. It's an echo. It's actually called an echo of our purpose in life. But the echo, what happens is as we are leaving that monumental encounter, the echo becomes softer and softer and softer because we're further and further away from it because it's a child now. It's a child, a grandchild, and it just keeps getting further and further in distance away from the original voice. But that voice is still there in every single one of us. And how can we interpret that voice? That voice is the voice inside of us. It's the Emuna voice. It's the inspiration. It's the what we call sixth sense. It's the intuition. It's the inside gut feeling of, come on, you know what you need to be doing. You know, even though you're so tired, come on, do that mitzvah. Come on, just get yourself off the couch. And she really needs your help. Just do it. Okay, I know you're angry. Just forgive, right? That's the echo of turning right versus when you want to turn left, going straight when you want to go backwards. All of that comes from this voice, and it's all the time echoing, and it's all the time there in the back of our minds, and all the time, guiding us to be in a different place than where we think we want to be. So on that day, at Har Sinai, we received the essential gift called Emuna. If we want to know where that Emuna really became more apparent inside our soul, it was at that monumental experience and encounter of hearing and seeing the voices and that knowingness that was planted into consciousness, and that was basically transmuted from generation to generation up until today. That up until today, there's an inner knowingness of, I know that there's, a supreme authority called Hashem. I know there is. How can I explain it? I don't know. And the only way to really attach yourself more so to that inner experience of what's inside, hidden inside of you called Emuna, the only way to access Emuna, and women will ask me regularly, how can I increase my Emuna? How can I increase Emuna? The only way to increase your Emuna is doing one simple, difficult act. And that is to go beyond yourself. Anytime the inside of you is saying to you, do something, and there's this resistance, and now you have to go beyond what we call, don't you love the Western world who calls comfort zone? But I'm so comfortable on this couch with my hot cocoa in hand. I don't want to go outside. I don't want to go and help that person. I don't want to listen to someone fetching on the phone now for half an hour. I've had enough.
Sounds like healthy.
I've had enough. I want this to be for me. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be for you, but we all know the limits of when we could push a little bit more and when we can't, right? I'm not saying to push yourself to the point where you're really pushing yourself so that there's no coming back to the original you, the healthy you. But there's this sense of going beyond. And why? Where did that come from? Look at this beautiful insight. What does it say after the first two commandments? What does it say? What happened to the Jewish people? What was the experience? What? What happened though? What? Their soul came out of themselves. You said it too? The soul came out of them. What does that mean? They themselves, listen to this concept, they themselves became outside of themselves. Right? They became outside. In other words, the extension of who they thought they were now outside. They became more than what they thought of themselves. No, not at all. What they basically became were spectators on themselves. They were basically they saw the finite existence, and they realized that their existence is beyond their bodies. Hence energy. Right?
Is that introspection?
But it's a real extraterrestrial kind of interest. It's like beyond this world, introspective. It's like really got to see things, what we call the observer effect, right? They really got to see And that's how essentially, and then they came back to themselves with what? With this new level of consciousness. This Emuna was no longer outside of them. It became part of them because they had experienced the experience from an outsider inside, and now they brought that wisdom and they put it inside themselves. In order to go back to that moment of the gift of Emuna, you have to go beyond yourself. And that's why many times I repeat, the idea of Emuna is the only way to access your Emuna is to go to your Keter, to go to your crown. Whoever's part of the Ratzon Chabura that I teach, basically the whole idea of the Ratzon Chabura is that we know that the Keter, the consciousness, is around our heads. And it's a crown. It's called a Keter. That's the highest level of godliness that we could somewhat access. Now, what is a crown? A crown on one hand sits on your head. On the other hand, it goes beyond your head. It's sort of in the air, right? There's a part of it that's not really on your head. The top of it's not on your head. So in order to really grasp the entirety of the godly consciousness, you have to really take as much of that Keter, of that crown, and put it into your brain, put it into your mind. What's in that Keter? So what's in that Keter are three very important soul powers. And the soul powers are called Emuna, Oneg, and Ratzon. Emuna, which is the idea of oneness. I can't go too much into it because that's part of the Chabura. If you want to know more, join us in May when I open up a new group. But there's the Emuna of the power of oneness, of the experience and recognition that I am part of the oneness of godliness, that there is a spark in me. It's not just, I love the word Baba Maisa. It's not just, and it's so funny because I don't know where these Ashkenazi roots are coming out of me. Part of me is Moroccan, part of me is United, whatever. But it's a great word. Anybody else have another word for Baba Maisa? I don't know, nonsense. But the idea is,
A tall tale.
Oh, a tall tale, okay. So the idea is that I know that I am really carrying a part of godliness inside of me. There's a oneness in me, and I know I'm really one. Part of me is part of the oneness of godly existence. That's the Emuna. Then you have Oneg, which is the delight and the pleasure of life. All happiness comes from the knowingness that I'm part of this oneness. I'm part of this oneness. And that makes me happy because I recognize there's a greater purpose. There's something beyond me that if I attach to it and feel that I'm part of a bigger plan, I'm part of creation, it makes me happy. Because I know that I'm not just thrown into happenstance of life. And that essentially gives birth to the third part of the Keter, which is called Ratzon. All willpower, all desire, all of the drives and motivations of life is to go back to that place of oneness. And that's really in a nutshell what the Chabur is about, is the process of how to get to that place back again through learning how our minds think and how our speech affects and how we feel, what we do, all part of the 10 spheres. So the concept is on that monumental day of Har Sinai, we essentially went beyond ourselves, and the only way to reach and get back that Emuna is every time that I have to go out of my comfort zone. I don't want to give, should I give? I don't want to give. I want to answer back, should I answer back? No. I want to be nicer, should I be nicer? No. He wants a cup of coffee, should I? Shouldn't I? All these pulls, all these battles, where I'm now going beyond myself. Every time I do that, I'm essentially taking the crown and putting it more firmly on my head and getting more godly consciousness, more godly light, and I'm attaching myself to not only Ratzon Hashem, but the pleasure of life and the Emuna. And that's what the whole experience is really all about. I cannot access Emuna unless I'm willing to take, that's what's called the leap of faith. All these axioms, they're all ours. They took it all away from us. It belongs to us. But the leap of faith is that I'm willing to take the risk of doing something that's beyond me. Like me? Oh, I would have let that person have it. Boy, would have screamed at that police officer or cashier or whoever. But I'm going to do something beyond my nature. I'm going to do something beyond what comes naturally, my tendency. I mean, I was naturally born angry. That's who I am, like it or leave it, right? No. The whole idea of life is to go beyond who you were born with, all those tendencies. They were given to you so you could break them, not accept them. There's certain things you don't want to accept. You want to accept yourself as being in the process and love yourself for the process, but you don't want to accept your bad traits and say, oh, this is it. This is who I am. And so that is what we learned from Yitro. He was willing to go beyond himself. He admitted that what he had done till now was wrong. He went beyond himself, left everything, all the high glory and big paycheck and, 401k plan. He left everything and went into the desert to eat man together with the rest of us. And that's essentially what we're being called to do. That's what Hashem wants for us to do, is to go beyond our comfort zone, remember that day, and it's not foreign to us. Today I had a little bit of a discussion because I had the zchut today to go to the kever of Rabbi Ashlad Zatzal, who's the latest commentator on the Zohar Kadosh. And he's buried here in Har Menuchot. I never went to his kever before. And someone was going there and offered to take us. It was a real big zchut. And it happens to be this lady that took me, she learns Kabbalah at the Kabbalah Center with Berg. I can't call him Rabbi, I'm sorry, but the Berg family, okay? And essentially we got into the whole discussion about, learning Kabbalah and how it's basically taught to all walks of life, to the non-Jews and the Jews. We got a whole argument. She's not observant, the whole argument, but the non-Jews, they're just as good as the Jews, and why can't they learn it? And we got into this whole thing. And I said to her, listen, there are certain gifts that we're given, and there are certain gifts that belong to them, and everybody has their own gifts. Why I'm even getting into this, I have no idea. Why did I even say this? No, but I said, why don't I say something else? This is one of those very Mishka Babel classes. Exactly. So the idea is for us to understand, maybe I was talking about the zchut of V'naseh v'nishma, that we were there, and we had the zchut. We were appointed, every single one of us was appointed to be this beacon of light. And everybody's got their job. And one person, has to play the violin in the whole orchestra of life, and the other one has to play the guitar, and everyone has their job. But the idea is that every single one of us needs to see ourselves as really being there. And this Shabbos, we hear it, if we read about it, whatever it is, try to take a moment, close your eyes, and try to see yourself right there. And try to experience the massive energy, because it comes back. Everything comes back. If we read it, that means it's there. It's not just a story. And so Be'ezrat Hashem, we should have the zchut to be able to recognize what it means to really tap into that the energy called the Emuna, and to anoint ourselves to be king over our emotions by putting that keter on and going beyond ourselves. Be'ezrat Hashem. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I wear a crown. Yes, Purim. We'll all be wearing crowns.